Hi, this is Matt with the Intergalactic Herald. Welcome to my Star Atlas Week in Review podcast. This is podcast number 126. Any articles or videos mentioned can be found on my website at intergalacticherald.com. Just look for weekly recap newsletter number 174. So just a quick summary of things to talk about. Things that happened this past week predominantly were the Atlas Brew from the Star Atlas community team. There was also a Lore Keepers community event. If you're interested in both audio recaps, short summary recaps of that, you can check those out on my website. I have AI audio summaries of those. Additionally, actually, that was pretty much it. There wasn't a lot. I think, no, that's pretty much it. But I do want to talk about an article that was in Decrypt website talking about why many crypto games are shutting down. So those are pretty much the two things that happened this past week. The Atlas Brew will mention the announcement of the Star Atlas Summer. But before I get into details there, just wanted to talk about a couple things I'm working on in the Star Atlas ecosystem. First, of course, is my website, intergalacticherald.com. It's a great resource website for Star Atlas. I got a beginner's guide, many directories, the audio recaps I mentioned, and recently launched a new newsletter, which is the Discord, Star Atlas Discord news announcement feed. So instead of having to check Discord, you can just have those sent to your email address. Also, I do have a Star Atlas merch store at intergalacticgear.com. It's open for business, does have a few mugs, need to put some more products in there, but been working on other things. But there's also a merch survey there, so I love if anybody wants to fill that out. And then lastly, I'm trying to get together a Star Atlas community of gamers who don't want to join guilds called the Intergalactic Coalition. You can go to intergalacticcoalition.com, got an interest survey there, and you can learn more about it. So let's go ahead and get into things that occurred this past week in the Star Atlas ecosystem. Like I mentioned, the main one was the Atlas Brew. There was, again, a Lore Keepers. In addition to my my audio summaries, you can watch the full ones thanks to Star Atlas TV if you check out their YouTube channel. Links to that is in the news recap that I mentioned. On the Atlas Brew, it was more of an explanation brew. And again, it's predominantly was a follow-up to the announcement of what they're calling Star Atlas Summer. Star Atlas Summer is a series of events, starting with the Community Week. I forget the dates. I think the end of the July, so a couple more weeks. And then they're going to have 3 independent town halls coming out. I'm not 100% sure if they're every week, but because I think there might be one gap in there, but definitely through the month of August. And they're being a little cagey on what exactly they're going over on those, but I'll get to that in a second. But Community Week was the first one that's coming up, and that one is pretty much set. I think they had dates, a little graphic to show that. So there is the Guild competition, COPA. There's the community competition, Joni. I think one of the town halls will occur there. And I think the other one is a new thing, newer, called Carnival. And they mentioned that will involve a Discord bot. So not exactly sure I understand, but it's basically a way for people in Discord to do different things and then earn tickets. I'm not sure. I don't think these are the Golden Carnival type. Oh, wait, Golden Carnival. Is this a cut? I hadn't thought about that. Sorry, they positioned it as Carnival like in Brazil, Rio Carnival. Sorry, I know the event, but I don't know what it is. But anyways, I just realized we did call them the Golden Carnival. So anyways, but basically it sounds like a way through Discord participation, maybe that's the best way to say it, to gain some tickets, and those tickets can be redeemed for prizes or put into drawings, and actually does sound a lot of interesting engagement things there. So anyway, that's the Community Week. And then the community team did mention a few things about things going on, a little bit on the town halls. I did mention that the first one will definitely be a release of the new UE5 version of the game, but they already alluded to that one and kind of some of the features that will hopefully be coming. Not that it's old news, but it's something, again, to be expected. And they were definitely very silent on what the other two, in fact, including that the third one, they're starting to hype it, but it's going to shock everybody and things like that. And again, that's perfectly fine. I'm totally okay with hyping these things and building excitement for them. But the other thing they did mention in the Atlas Brew, which I thought was interesting and not totally out of left field, but definitely new, and they were mentioning that they haven't really been doing much marketing, but they said they have been talking to a lot of people externally. They didn't elaborate on who the people were. Sounds they're talking like partnerships and things like that. So again, I totally am okay with the vagueness type of thing. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see what all that entails. Yeah, so it does sound like a cool kind of period of time coming up where we'll get a lot of new releases, new information about things, and I'll have some more kind of speculation in my kind of State of Star Atlas section. And then the last thing, which I'll talk more about, near the end is there was an article in Decrypt titled Why So Many Crypto Games Are Shutting Down. And I actually found it really interesting, partly because it is a third-party view of the larger crypto game landscape. And so I'll mention a few things. Links to that is, again, in my news recap number 174. If you check it out on my website, intergalacticherald.com. So moving into the next section, which is more of a kind of thoughts about the state of Star Atlas for this past week. So definitely excitement is building for Community Week, and I think it's really good. And I think this is the third time they've done it. It is definitely becoming a community tradition, and I actually kind of like the tie-in to summer. Again, clever marketing, great branding, Star Atlas Summer. But I think just to keep momentum going, it does feel like now after a few years that the team definitely seems to have a 6-month cycle on products development, a big push, or big, I shouldn't say push, but definitely conclusion and end of the year wrap up, and then they take their break. And now it sure feels like the summer is the next one. Work for 6 months, put some stuff out. So again, definitely great branding on Star Atlas Summer. Some great graphics have been produced. The 3 town halls, they said were aligned definitely to product releases, and that also makes a ton of sense with, again, UE5 being the first one out of the gate on the middle of the community week. Also do think very nice that they're spreading these out, with the last town hall, seems like only a month ago, being 3+ hours. I mentioned on the podcast at the time, it was almost too much to comprehend and really let it sink in, and then give it a week and it just feels like in the past. So the fact that these are going to be staggered and coming out with potentially the biggest reveal at the end, I think is great. Great community, great marketing. So total, definitely great rollout. One thing I thought I'd do a little differently, because again, they weren't talking about anything, but you can't help but speculate. So I thought I would go ahead and do a little bit of speculation. This is, again, no insider information, no leaks. Nothing's been mentioned in the Foundation Room because it's public now, so there's nothing there. So this is truly just me making stuff up. So take it for what it's worth, but I thought I would just do it. So one, I don't think C4 is part of this release, and that's partly because they have announced that they'll do a public test beforehand. Now, could it be that the public test is announced? Sure, that would be perfectly in alignment, but I don't think C4, in the sense of it's ready, it'll be, hey, we're ready to start testing. And again, they did mention they need a public test for that. Would I be disappointed if it doesn't come? A little bit, but I think it's, and I've said this before, I think it's very ambitious, but in a good way, of tying in so many things. And if they did want to release it, I think they have been matching more of their rollout. We did get a lot of information about C4 at the last town hall, which was then followed up by Q&As through Atlas Brews. So this feels like the rollout of the local markets and fleet rentals. So I think, again, this kind of prepping everybody. So yeah, I think a public test announcement for C4 feels like a good time to do it. HoloSim, I think, is another opportunity. That definitely could be a public release. And it fits in, I think, with the whatever promoting or hyping that they've been talking to people externally, because of all the products they've been talking about and or showing recently, that one feels the most one that third parties and partnerships could really help promote. Plus, it's web-based, so anyone can get into it. So again, I think it's a perfect kind of intro product, easy to get people excited about, and from what we've heard on past brews, people who are playing it are really enjoying it. And just as I went to record this, I noticed that Beyond the Horizon just started apparently a new HoloSim series, so I'm kind of looking forward to listening to that and seeing more about it. As a true out of left field speculation, even if it isn't a public release, just the fact if they announced a mobile version, so an app version. And this was alluded to that definitely HoloSim could be a mobile app, something that could get approved in the app stores, Apple's and Google Play, because there is no crypto. And I think, if I remember correctly, there's still some resistance on the app stores for crypto things. So I think that would be, really, that would be something totally out of left field, but I also think it would be an awesome development place to get back into having some sort of mobile app-based thing. There was talk years ago about doing a crew thing for that, and it was disappointing that one didn't work out because of the mechanics of getting to, move to earn algorithms, if I remember correctly. So anyways, I think that would be a totally thing that they could have kept secret. The other reason I think it could come out of nowhere is it fits with that would be a thing that they outsourced, because I never heard that they had app developers. Obviously, they got UE5 developers, though they're having lots of that being outsourced. And definitely they have website developers and they got blockchain developers, but never heard about mobile developer or mobile app developers. So another thing, and I guess this one kind of wasn't totally my own thinking because it had some stuff on Twitter and I didn't really read, but some people tweeted about the Atlas Locker. And again, that would be another thing that would make, I think, a lot of sense to come out to. And then the final speculation, and this goes to something that I picked up on many months back when Michael Wagner had an interview. He mentioned that there was going to be some sort of July announcement, and this was made months ago. So this, I think, falls into maybe this third town hall being something completely shocking and whatever, and even the community team mentioning that they're surprised everything's been quiet for so long. Again, I am, this is all about speculation, but I guess I am thinking something that truly blows us away has been in the works for many months, and so we'll see. Now, however, saying that, and I am hopeful of finally building some momentum, definitely talking to people externally, making partnerships, and again, I'm just playing both sides of the coin, but we have been similar to things like this where we've had hyped events and then they do actually disappoint. So I think this comes down to just being in the community too long and following it too long and not being disappointed. But again, I happened to go into the game today and accidentally clicked on the Faction Fleet button and I didn't even realize pop-up comes up and says, hey, this thing's going away. And I'm like, oh, but it's still here. We'll see. But having said that, I think timing's definitely been releasing things. It seems like they're moving in directions. Again, the idea of talking to external people all feels good momentum and things like that. So hopefully that's just being a little too negative and say, yeah, but it's happened before. So again, we'll see where it all goes. But ultimately, I think it looks like a great couple of weeks and or months ahead of announcements and new information. That's all great. Final thing I wanted to quickly touch on, that article I mentioned from Decrypt about why so many crypto games were shutting down, and I actually found it very insightful, both to look at Star Atlas more objectively, but also to put some understanding on maybe why some of the other games in the Web3 crypto space have flamed out. And one thing someone mentioned is just in video games development in general, 90% of games fail. And I was like, what? Games are coming out all the time. But what they mentioned was that most of these failures happen outside the public. So a game studio has an idea, maybe they work on it for a year or two, never even announce it as even something they're working on, and they just decide to go in a different direction. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. You just don't hear about it. The other reason they mentioned that many of the crypto games have shut down is lack of investment money. And again, that makes sense too. And this is something I know I've been hearing about over the years with funding and why the whole independent games movement kicked on, where just one or two people can build something. Because to be a AAA game and whatever, needing a backing of a big publishing studio, which could funnel tens of millions of dollars to have multi-year development cycles, thinking Call of Duty or GTA or things like that. So yeah, forgetting the whole crypto thing, somebody's got to pay for this. And if you're not a publisher who's constantly making a game and can take the revenues from a current game to build the next game, yeah, you have to look for outside sources, which again is why crypto was so intriguing, because then you could, in a sense, crowdfund it through token sales and things like that, Kickstarter-like mechanisms. So another thing the article mentioned I thought was great, interesting, was again that traditional gamers have not been interested in blockchain integration, and that still feels right. Again, maybe 2 or 3 years ago when blockchain and Web3 and all that was the rage, you could make some arguments, but traditional gamers, to me anyways, are about gaming. They're not really concerned about technology. Yeah, they want things to look better, but again, they've never been concerned with engines other than the newer engine should look better. Specs, I guess, on a console, sure, but doing something totally unique. And I think, again, some of now the stigma against blockchain, now it's been a couple of years since it came out and didn't really become the part that changed the world or something like that. Again, they want a game, and I've been in that camp too, wanting to play something. The other thing the article mentioned was releasing tokens before anything was playable. Again, if you're releasing a game and you sell tokens in order to fund it, makes sense. But then if there's nothing to play and the token, just doesn't matter, again, if you're, interested in the game. Related to that, they mentioned that having a token caused some of the development teams to have to feel a lot of pressure on the price of the token and whether it goes up or down, and this kind of dovetails with the thing I think I mentioned in the last podcast or a couple back on Michael Wagner mentioning on Telegram about his focus being to sell tokens they own to keep funding the studio so the studio can make the game, because if there's no studio, there's no game, and who cares about the token price? I think that all makes sense, that those would be extra things that a leadership team within a game or, I guess, founders, whatever, would have to be worried about, especially if that's the way they're funding things. And then last thing the article mentioned, and it was, I thought, almost an afterthought, but I actually had thought about it a little more since I wrote down, is just short attention spans. Again, traditional gamers or gaming studios may not even release the game, other than like we know a next version of Call of Duty is coming out next year. But if you're developing a new game or new IP, they call it, something totally new, they don't even talk that it exists until maybe a year before release. So that is time you can keep hyping it, you can keep getting people interested, and then you release. But this idea of, again, building in public, selling a token in order to fund it before you put anything playable, bluntly, people they got more things to do with their time, and it's hard to stay invested in something that doesn't see the light of day for a long time. And again, you can look at it both ways of why these are shutting down. You can go to the other side and say there's things like Star Citizen that's been out forever and still getting money. But again, I argue the point either way is that even a mainstream game. But I think we do need to acknowledge that there are lots of things that are vying for attention. Gaming is just one entertainment form: movies, TV, internet, social media. And it's hard to keep people focused on anything unless they're constantly being fed something new. So anyways, I think it was a really great article. Again, a link to it is in my news recap. Go to intergalacticherald.com, look for news recap number 174. And again, it was just, I think, a great article. Final section, just wanted to keep an update on my journey playing Star Atlas. So again, I'm predominantly playing the Sage, trying to craft enough resources to redeem Mamba X. Finished mining my hydrogen. I had run out of fuel to move my fleet back and forth. Fortunately, just after I'd moved all my diamond back from the farthest starbase from the Central Space Station. So now I'd churned my big fleet to start moving back the titanium ore that I'd been mining with my little miner. So I got some fuel crafting and keeping the fuel supply going. It looks like the big fleet's actually keeping up one real time to the miner. Normally on some of these I've put the big fleet into mining, but feel like ultimately I fall behind on transport. So just keep moving stuff and it'll just hit the goal of I forget how many millions of titanium ore I need to mine. So anyways, just feeling like that's a good, stable thing. Definitely feel like I'm in a rhythm now with mining with one miner ship, and then the big fleets doing the transport, buying the necessary resource on the local market to keep the miner going, and then just mining fuel or hydrogen to make fuel to keep moving it back to the Central Space Station. Local market, I got to check tomorrow, but I think everything or close to sold out, so that's good. I think that's an intriguing loop, and I guess I should maybe reconsider that on this next one, but I have to admit, it's just one more thing to manage, and I think from a supply chain and a return on investment standpoint, if the ammo is cheaper at the Central Space Station than it is at the Starbase, then it's immediately good. But I don't know, maybe a little hesitance with the Star Atlas Summer coming out and finding out when C4 is officially coming, just not managing too many resources that ultimately will have to be pulled back to the Central Space Station to be removed. At least that's how we had to do it last time. So unsure on these local markets, even if it was preserved through it, the new combat mechanism where if you don't own the starbase, you can have all your resources burned. I don't know, just maybe a little hesitancy to knowing something is going to change with C4 going. I don't even out one thing. Obviously, my ships can all be moved back, but don't want to have too many resources spread out waiting for people to buy them, because if it crashes the local markets and nobody wants to buy, then it feels, again, risk in the sense that the game is not permanent. But again, still feels like a rhythm, and so I'm feeling good on that. So anyway, so that's pretty much all I said. So thanks for listening. Again, just want to mention, if anybody is interested in being a podcast guest, please go to my website, find the contact page, and love to chat with you. Also, again, while you're there, on intergalacticherald.com, Yeah, go ahead and check out the guides, directories, recaps, Discord newsfeed. If you're interested in a minor selection of Star Atlas merch, please go to intergalacticgear.com. And if you want to eventually hang out with some Star Atlas gamers who are not members of guilds, please check out intergalacticcoalition.com. So thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you had enjoyed listening to the week in review. This is Matt with the Intergalactic Herald. Have a great week ahead.